We're in the final week of the WCW Nitro crowdfunding project, and who better to be on the Go Home show than Steve Ozer, Mattel WWE manager of global brand marketing. Thanks for being here, Steve.
Thanks so much for having me.
You've been on the podcast circuit of late. I know you've solicited a lot of questions from everyone in the community, and we'll start with one off the top that might be a softball. Your friend Moody asked, how many podcasts have you done in the last month? And are you going to take a month-long vacation after May 5th?
I sure need a month-long vacation at least. I don't know if that's possible though. But probably between podcast appearances, YouTube, I'll throw in some of those WrestleMania interviews that we did. It's got to be over 20.
That's wild.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
crazy. It's crazy. When I thought about the number the other day, I was like, man, like I've been doing a lot of these in a row, and I just started counting. I was like, man, surpassing 18, 19, 20. I was like, holy smokes, that's a lot. It's a lot. And then hearing like, I don't know if they're communicating enough. I'm like, I don't know if there's, any more time in the day to do more than what we're currently doing or what I'm currently doing.
Well, and I don't think folks realize that you're doing all of this on your free time.
Yeah, I mean, we're running the brand, during regular business hours, and the crowd fund is just one item amongst hundreds of items. It's a big item, it's important, but we're just doing our day-to-day stuff during 9 to 5, 9 to 6, and then nights and weekends is extra effort to kind of nudge the crowdfunded project along.
So there's less than a week to go to hit that 5,000 units sold to fund the stage, the two Ultimate Edition figures, Rey Mysterio, and the first time in the lines, Big Papa Pump, Scott Steiner. It's 43% funded as at this point as we chat. So what's your hard sell to someone who might be on the fence about this project at this point?
I mean, if you're on the fence, but it interests you, I would say please jump in now, early as possible, because that will create the kind of landslide effect of everyone else gaining more faith in the item. It'll gain more traction, more people will jump on board and help us surpass that 5,000 unit goal. It's truly a once in a lifetime item, something of this size, scale, scope. They don't come around very often, especially for WWE. Ever since Toys R Us went away, a lot of these larger scale play sets, for lack of a better term, have been few and far between. So this is kind of our chance to have our own GI Joe US flag, right? And it's going to be a low run item on top of it, so it's like you're going to get a rare, low run, epic scale item. And it sets the bar for future items. Can we do things like this? Does this particular community want items like this? And if the answer is yes, or if you're leaning towards yes, jump in now. And I'll just be transparent on the other side. If it's not for you, you don't have to get it. That's totally okay. This isn't for everybody. It's for a specific, segment of our collector community who likes, large display pieces, or wants things like this for figure photography, or has some sort of vision for an epic display. So, if it's not for you, it's okay. If it is for you, join us now as soon as possible and jump in, and let's make this thing happen.
I've seen a lot of talk about the price and the value. And as somebody who, in the last probably 4 or 5 years, who has went back and purchased some of those old Jack sets, whether it's the Fist stage or the old Raw stage or the scale Hell in a Cell, like all of those items are triple digit figures, and sometimes in that mid range that's not too far off from this project.
Yeah, I mean, I have some of those old play sets, like the Fist stage, and there was a Ross. They were in really, slim, small boxes. They definitely weren't to scale, and they're going for hundreds of dollars now. And then the real scale play sets that they did, like Elimination Chamber and the Hell in the Cell, those things are also going for big bucks. And I think they were probably like $100, years ago, or close to $100. But epic stuff in a Toys R Us world, right? And that just goes to show, like, when Toys R Us went away, those items kind of went away with them. But I mean, it's an opportunity now to make things like that happen again. So that's why it's exciting to have, avenues like Mattel Creations to explore things like this, to see if there really is a market for people who want items like this.
So assuming this does fund, and we're going to try and stay positive and think that it's going to get there, this will be the second crowd fund that has really gone down to the wire for you all. And given that this project has been a little bit more polarizing, I guess, than I would have expected after seeing such a positive reaction at Comic-Con, how do you view the appetite for projects of this size and scale?
I think it's too early to say, because I was looking at the numbers this morning, and on the Wednesday before the Macho Man Early Bird ended, we were at roughly 2,800 units. And we're at just about, not quite there yet, but almost at 2,200 units today, the Monday heading into the last day of the crowdfund. Now, to me, that's a decent apples to apples comparison, because for all intents and purposes, that crowdfund ended when the Macho Man Early Bird ended, right? We saw that huge uptick in backers on the last day, specifically surpassing 8,000, and it kind of dried up after that, right? So really, if you're looking at the numbers, we're kind of in that comparison spot right now of final days of Macho Man with New Gen, and our final days here of this particular crowdfund. And I kind of like equate the two, because we put the Scott Steiner in there, period, right? As that bonus figure. So we're kind of like neck and neck where we were with that one. So I don't know, because when you look back at, if you go to the Ringside forums as an example, and you look at the new generation thread, it eerily mimics everything that you're seeing here about price value, size, figure choices. I mean, everything. So it could just be an in the moment thing of where everyone's, criticizing and deciding whether they want to jump on board, or championing the item, or fantasy booking their own version of it or lineup for it. But I mean, the real, validation of whether people want this or not will come Friday, of course. So I kind of, it's too early to say, just based on the trend of the last item.
I'm not sure a lot of folks realize how big the stage is too, because until you posted to Instagram that photo of the new gen arena on the actual stage, I don't think it was driven home to even me how big this stage is.
It's pretty massive, and a lot of people got to see it in person at the WrestleMania Superstore at the convention center here in LA. But it's really huge, and I spent the weekend really posing action figures with it, and doing some photography, and getting some footage for reels and whatnot, just to show the possibilities of owning this, and what it'd be like to recreate, scenes from Nitro and use a lot of your old figures. But it's huge, but it's also really modular, so you can strip it down and customize it to make it work for, whatever you want to display. And I think I've said this on some of the other interviews where I've been in my toy room at home. But if I didn't have these like top shelves on top of my bookcases, and maybe the ceiling was a little higher, I could fit the slim version on top here, much like, that reels from one of the offices at work. And you can set it up for a long ramp entrance way that, practically goes to the ring, whatever you want to do. So there's lots of customizable setups you can do to make it work for you, or just go all out and, get a big table in your toy room and set it all up as is there, which is, what we did this weekend in the conference room for those photos.
Yeah, it looked like you were working overtime there, taking
Def-
those photos on Sunday. So, or
Definitely, but it's
sharing
it's
them.
it's fun. It's fun, and look, I think it's going to happen Friday. If it doesn't happen, I had a chance to dive in and play with it, as if I owned it. So that was pretty cool.
Well, it's easy for you to say because it's gonna end up on your desk. You're gonna be able to see it every day after this.
I will, and I don't want to be the only one, you know, like, yes, I can display it in my cube if I want to on my desk, but that's no fun. I don't do this to have exclusivity of things for myself. Like, I want everyone to have, you know, all this stuff that the team works so hard on. I mean, dozens and dozens of people literally worked on this item. It's a beast of a project, and it'd be a shame to just, you know, have that relegated to, you know, my cube or the archives or wherever it may be.
How many hours do you think that the team has put into this project to make it, you know, to get to the point that you launch it?
uh, hundreds hundreds
Hundreds?
of hours. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you think of a project like this, the seeds being planted. I mean, before my time, I've been with Mattel over 5 years now, but the seeds have been planted way before that, right? Mike Cadili was working on an item like this for at least 7 years of trying to get something like this happen. And we showed an early version of a stage at the first access that we did where we really amped up our collector presence. Like, that's kind of the beginnings of trying to make that happen, trying to gauge consumer interest, and then waiting for the stars to align with Mattel to have, you know, kind of a system in place to be able to deliver things like this to consumers, right? So it's like you account for all that time of Mike's time, of us exploring the raw stage, of us exploring alternate options for what this could have been. It's hundreds of hours by, you know, like I said, maybe 2 dozen people, more possibly.
Yeah. Well, this is a project that seemingly is evolving in real time as you work through it. And one of the things that you've talked about is the Scott Steiner Ultimate figure is going to get some design updates from the prototype that was originally shown. So, can you walk us through those changes? And will we see some of that appear on either social or the Mattel Creation site before the end of the before the deadline?
I don't think that's going to be possible. I mean, we do have to work with Licensor to figure out a look that we can do. We'll have to find a look that may not have any outside creator issues, as can be the case with an artist who creates gear. He has a few graphical choices that are similar with the white singlet with the star. So we're going to have to hone in there and see what we can do. Maybe some things need to be tweaked here or there to give us the ability to create that as an action figure. So the process can be long sometimes with gear like that, especially when it's not created like in-house by modern WWE. So there's a little bit of homework to be done. And I mean, I scrubbed through basically a year's worth of nitros to find selections of that gear for him. And he actually didn't wear the singlet very long. He went out with an injury a few months after the heel turn, and when he returned, he had the biker shorts.
Mm.
So, you know, there's a couple we're looking at to select from. You know, just because we need to cross our T's and dot our I's, we can't really reveal what that is yet. But I mean, you know the era that it's going to be, right? It's that post heel turn right before the injury, and there's at least, I don't know, maybe four or so that we're honing in on that would work for this particular figure.
Right on. And something else that you've brought up, and I know you don't like to talk about the secondary market, but anyone
But
who's
I have
you
been like
have been,
crazy lately.
yeah,
No choice.
yeah. Well, anyone who's looked at a Sergeant Slaughter black card sort of knows what the pricing of that figure is at this point, and that is the rarest Ultimate Edition figure that's out there. And so you've said, you know, if this funds at only 5,000 at the base, that the Scott Steiner and Rey Mysterio would be the second and third or 2A, 2B on the rarest list.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, not quite as rare as Sarge, of course. He's in the triple digits, but you know, 5,000 units basically. If you know that's what we net out at, then you do have your second and third most rare figures here in Scott and Ray. And you know that's kind of meaningful to some. Rarity does play you know, play a hand in secondary market value, of course, and cost of an item, right? Like, if an item is produced less, it usually costs a company more to produce. So, you know, fortunately, you know, those rates are reflected, or fortunately, unfortunately, however you want to look at it, those rates are reflected in the $400 price point of the item already. But long story short, you do get two pretty rare ultimate figures if this goes through at the minimal units that we want. I mean, the hope is you get more and you unlock more, right? Because that's what people really want. They want more figures. So it'd be great to get to DDP or beyond. But worst case scenario, that it funds and you just get two figures, you get two super rare figures.
Where would 7,000 with DDP be as far as on the scale of rarity?
Still pretty rare. Still pretty rare. Obviously, that Macho Man from New Gen, we've seen his prices. I mean, I've seen some go as low as 80, but some go way above 300 and fluctuates all the time. So, but DDP would be less than Randy, right? So you can use Randy as your gauge of things for Dallas.
Fair. Um, any other updates, developments for the stage or the figures in the project that you can share at this point?
I mean, I can say I ran a poll over the weekend about packaging and what people would want to see for packaging for the figures. And the options were your just straight up Ultimate Edition packaging with the inverted colors, like you saw with the new gen figures, or something a little more throwbacky to the 90s, like a Coliseum collection style execution, but based on the 90s Toy Biz packaging, or both, right? Like these are Ultimate Edition figures. That Coliseum collection packaging allows you to easily take the figures in and out. Maybe we just give you both sets of packaging, and you decide, right? Because I know even if we go with the winning votes by percentage, there's going to be maybe people upset that they didn't get their traditional ultimate packaging. So we're exploring kind of like the winner, which definitely was leaning towards 90s vintage, and maybe just doing both, right? So you can swap them out and do as you please. So we're currently exploring that. We'll see what happens, but I think people will at least get what they're wishing for, and be happy, especially if we go with the both option.
Would that be more of a Toy Biz than Toy Makers tribute?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at both. We could lean towards Toy Makers. Toy Biz has a little more going on, right?
Hmm.
And I think with Toy Makers, it's like the graphic of the superstar was I think a little small circle at the bottom, and you have big superstar artwork. Yeah. Oh, there you go. There's one a little bit bigger. Um, I was thinking of the ones from a little bit later, from the Nitro era of Toy Makers, right?
I don't think I have those handy,
But
but I did have this
yeah.
guy.
Yeah. These were the LJN types. When I was looking at stuff, I was looking at the ones that are more akin to the Hasbro's, right, with a little
Mm,
bit of articulation. And the packages did get a little plainer at the time for that era. So I do think for Nitro, I would probably shy away from what you just showed me and move more towards the San Francisco Toy Maker articulated era or the Toy Biz era. And there's some similarities between the two, fortunately. So we'll see. We'll see what the packaging team ultimately comes up with,
yeah.
and
Well,
licensor approval, of course. Right? It's not just a Mattel show here.
exactly. Well, it's a collaborative thing. So, I mean, there's only so much you can do. And ultimately, like you said, WWE has to sign off on it. So, there's been a lot of debate and armchair quarterbacking of the figure selection. I'm sure you've probably heard. Um, but one of the things that I've heard come up is what was the ultimate reason to exclude the three original NWO members? And g- with the caveat that Hulk's in there, but he would have been Postomania if you could have, but ended up red and yellow.
I I honestly can't tell you because it was such a process, with multiple people weighing in, and at some point they were just eliminated. Of course, they were considered. Everyone has been mentioning was considered, but at a point they got bumped out for whatever reason. Maybe they're going somewhere else. Maybe there was another idea for them. Maybe I know Nash being in two crowdfunds back to back was tossed out there, right? As maybe we shouldn't do it. So I don't remember ultimately why they were eliminated, but they were obviously contenders, right? As would every feasible person that we had access to. They were all contenders and heavily considered. But at the end of the day, you have a lot of people giving input, and you have to make alignments on things. And it netted out, with what you see currently.
If this stage doesn't fund for whatever reason, these ultimates are the attire choices are off the table for future ultimates, right?
Yep, yep. These attire choices, these looks, are exclusive to this set. So if the set doesn't happen, you're not going to see ultimates with these looks.
You mentioned the Coliseum collection cards, and we talked a little bit about the Sergeant Slaughter black card. Are black cards, and I know this is a little off subject, but are black cards off the table, or is that an execution that we could see in the future for that line?
And we could talk about anything, by the way. Like, this doesn't
Oh
have to be
yeah,
the Nitro Stage show. Anything you want to talk about, I'm game. Um, I I wouldn't rule it out, but it did seem like there was, at the time, right? At the time, there was a lot of negative feedback on those black cards. I feel like that's turned around now, and people want them again. But it's like one of those things. Like, do you listen to the feedback of the time, or do you maybe think that minds have evolved, and maybe want something like that again? I don't know. We'll I mean, we'll see. Maybe that's a nice adrenaline shot in the arm to give Coliseum Collection an extra boost, and people would dig that. I mean, maybe it's a poll. Maybe I throw it out there as an unofficial poll again if people want to see it come back. It's hard because it's a retail item, right? So it's not a retail item; it's DTC. So it's not like you can accidentally stumble into Target and see a black card there and know that you've hit the jackpot. You're just hoping for the best when you order. So it kind of, I get it. It gets a little bit tough. But I do love how that black card slaughter turned out, and I would like to see them come back.
yeah, and I was just wondering if it could also be something that you just do for a guy that was on a black card in the original LJN line, as opposed to a chase figure or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, totally doable. Totally doable. We actually had a third option as well. We were toying around with like an even rarer than black card version. So there's another color scheme that we have in our back pocket that we could possibly break out.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
Well, one more thing on the stage as far as like pricing and shipping is there's been a lot of talk from international collectors as far as the price. And I know you've put out some statements on that. And I've heard from, more folks about there was a Canadian collector who mentioned geo slash international pricing. Is there anything more to add on that, or is that just kind of what it is at this point?
Yeah, there's nothing I can personally do other than pass along feedback to the Mattel Creations team. I asked for clarification and talking points, which were those statements that I read on the live stream and that I shared on social media and the forums. I see what people are saying. I understand the frustration, absolutely. But I see other international customers who have done the breakdown, and they're seeing with their math like a $30 to $40, discrepancy, and they don't know what it is. And I don't know, like, if it's just whatever they're looking at for values of things versus what the company that is fulfilling these orders is looking at. I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to speak to anything incorrectly. All I can do is say, I feel you. I'm passing along that information, and if there's anything that can be done, that team has been looking into it. But I just don't think that that's going to be possible. We have a week left. I don't know if anything can change across the board for the entire site, because it's not just WW Mattel and the crowdfund. It's everything on that site that is kind of handled that way right now. So, I get it. It is frustrating. I wish we had 100% participation internationally of people who maybe are maybe priced out or uncomfortable. But here we are. We're a week away from this thing ending, and I know that team has been, exhausting explorations of what can be done, but I just think we're out of time.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Monday Night Wars line that's going to be coming, I believe, in 2024. It's going to replace the Ruthless Aggression line that's exclusive to Walmart stores. It's going to have a build a figure in those uh, packaging. Will the figures exclusively be attires and looks from Raw and Nitro, or could they potentially be pay per view attires from that era?
would like, my vision now is all Raw and Nitro attires. And do I have an Elite handy? I don't. Well, and imagine the spine of your Elite figure, and there's a logo usually on there, right? It's an Elite Collection logo, or maybe a segment logo. Instead of that, you'll have your company logo of the time. So if it's early Monday Night War era, you'll get your new generation logo for WWE, and you'll get the traditional block logos for WCW. And as you move down the line towards the end, you'll get that less popular version of the WCW logo with the scratch logo for WWE, and hopefully the date of the attire, the look, the happening. So we
Oh,
really
nice.
want you to be able to, sure, people can line them up in series order if they'd like, but that also gives you the option to chronologically recreate bookshelf style the Monday Night Wars via action figures. So that's kind of the dream of what we hope to accomplish. I hope it all works out. But with that, we want to stick to Raws and Nitros.
Okay, so that makes sense for why the Eddie Guerrero Ultimate Edition figure in Series 2 won't be based on Halloween Havoc, but a similar attire to what he wore on a Nitro during that era.
Right. And, without doing the research now, I don't know if he wore it on Nitro. I'm assuming he did. And if we can find a Nitro where he wore that gear, then it's in. But if not, we'll get pretty close. It'll be that era of Eddie, that look, that hairstyle, slimmer in the face, slimmer build. Yeah, so it's definitely sticking to the actual Monday Night War head-to-head Nitro and Raw.
Is the vision for that line to essentially be Walmart's answer to the Legends uh, Elite line?
I mean, sort of, not really, but sort of. Every retailer should have something ownable for their customized segment. That's what it's called, like in the business, customized. We all know as collectors it's exclusives, but you want an ownable, customized, or exclusive segment for each retailer. That's why Target clearly has Legends. Walmart clearly had Superstars and Ruthless Aggression. Amazon clearly has, once again, Fan Takeover, right? Something very ownable and distinct, and you know that you can go to that retailer to get it. So really more that's kind of why we're doing it, more so than like an answer to Legends. We just want something clearly defined for each retailer, and I think everyone will know Monday Night War is Walmart. Period. It's very memorable. The era is memorable. The war was memorable. So yeah, it's a pretty cool ownable program for them.
The first lineup is heavy hitters. It's Undertaker, Stone Cold, Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan, Hogan, I should say, and then a Build-A-Figure Lex Luger. Is it going to be sort of bangers like that, or, will we see some more, like, first time in the line guys, some deep cuts, make that line?
We'll do whatever we can. The Build-A-Figure slot is interesting because, I mean, when we reveal wave 2 of elites, you'll see, at least for the Build-A-Figure, it does move away from main eventer, right? So we'll do whatever we can. We'll push and work with WWE for, new signings as we always do. And if someone opens up who fits well in this line, they'll certainly go in there. But yeah, I mean, we'll run out of main eventers pretty quickly if we stick to that formula. So yes, super strong with main eventers out of the gate, and then more balanced lineups as we go.
I know there's a lot of concern about Walmart being sort of the home of that from collectors, because there was sort of a pre-order purge about a week ago where the Ruthless Aggression, I think it was Series 3, and WWE Superstars Series 4 were all canceled for a lot of folks. I think maybe the majority of folks. Is there anything you can share as far as, what's being done to sort of make sure that doesn't happen with future pre-orders, like the Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero Ultimate Edition Ruthless Aggression figures that are already on pre-order, or even these Monday Night War figures down the line?
I mean, I think most of the people watching, listening know that, I am aware of these things. I'm a collector. I'm on social media all the time, and I buy the same stuff that everyone else buys, and I'm experiencing it as well, right? And not just our line, multiple lines, right? So, I'm seeing this and I'm screen capping and I'm passing along that information to the teams that actually can impact, hopefully change, avoid things like this in the future. And I do think that they are working on things that should hopefully rectify that going forward so that we can avoid these pre-order cancellations going forward, and people can get things fulfilled in a timely fashion, hopefully. And then the experience at retail will be a little bit better as well. It's called mix management, and just trying to get fresher mixes in there in a timely fashion. So there's things being worked on. I'm hoping this is more akin to, I don't think the entire ride of Masters of the WWE Universe was smooth sailing at retail, but it was a little smoother than I think what we're experiencing right now. And it'd be great to get back to that, versus what we're currently experiencing with trying to find like these later waves.
Mm. I want to switch gears a little bit to the defining moments line, and that's coming back through Ringside Collectibles. And the first pre-orders are already up. It's Mankind, Cody Rhodes, Bret Hart, and Shawn Michaels in there. How frequent are the defining moments lines or waves going to be? Are they going to be once a year, or could it be more than that?
Yeah, it looks like right now we're gonna do one set a year. And it kind of mirrors how many defining moments figures came previously. They were quarterly previously. Now they're just coming all at once. So you're still getting the same amount that you would have gotten, in years prior when that line was alive. It's just happening all at once, and you get a sweet box set if you get them all at the same time. But I think, giving Ringside that variety of ex- exclusives, varied types of exclusives has been pretty beneficial to them. And you can only do so much in a year, right? They've got Ultimate Edition tag teams, they've got defining moments, they've got retro tag teams, and then kind of like a miscellaneous item like the Mega Power set. So we'll do something else like similar to that. So looking to anniversary that, give them, varied items, give them the ability to, sell those individually or as box sets, and hopefully keep that momentum that they currently have going.
Are they going to step back from the exclusives that we were seeing that came with sort of that fold out diorama?
So those single figures, I don't know that you'll see just drops of a single figure anytime in the near future, but it doesn't mean like maybe something like that isn't offered as like some sort of bundle like defining moments. But I think if we do go back to that, it'll be as part of like a greater package, a wave, basically.
Ah, okay. Well, you got me earlier today because I had to buy the Usos when they hit first thing, because I'm stoked that we're finally getting Ultimate Edition tag teams. So that's a great ad.
I'm glad you like them. They just turned out so good seeing them in person. I think the first time I actually got to see them, we were setting up that influencer event in Mattel for WrestleMania weekend. And we set them up there and they just look so good. And, the extra, black deco, like it's black on black, but it's a really nice, has a nice sheen to it. So Bill did a nice job with those. And, that's one where, I didn't know, like when I saw it, like, hey, how's this going to look as an ultimate, like just their black pants again. But it looks next level. They look really good. So I'm pretty happy with that, and they're happy. They're excited that they're the first Ultimate tag team, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and back to defining moments, the thing that has sort of stuck out to me is that seems to be one of the first lines that we've seen battle damage, as far as like scarring, Cody's chest or pec or whatever. And then Mankind with the dual heads, he's got the tooth and all that. Is that something that we're going to see more of in the future? And maybe not to the degree that we've seen, with other companies with their blood and guts figures, but is that something that Mattel could do as a ringside exclusive in the future?
I think some of us definitely want that. Can we all completely align, right? That's the thing. And it did work this time. It worked for Mankind and it worked for Cody. And hopefully there's everyone sees their success there, and we can keep, nudging it along and do more and more. So there's plenty in the library of options to choose from. So we definitely are being conscientious of that when making decisions for the next, defining moments box set or any ringside item for that matter.
Multiple heads have become sort of a staple of a lot of the lines, especially Ultimate Edition. We've seen that in the defining moments as well with the Mankind sort of before and after. Could we get more before and after looks in the future?
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, there's some people who look, sleek and put together when they make their entrance, and look completely disheveled by the end of the match, understandably so. So there's a lot you can do there, whether it's hair or battle damage or facial expressions. So, I know Bill's explored, in motion hair before with AJ Styles and Roman Reigns and Edge. So there's plenty you can do to explore. So I think he's going to keep pushing the limits on what can be done there. And I think there is something actually in the works that we might reveal at Comic-Con that has like a post-match hair look as a swappable head. So that'll be cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that would be very cool. Um, in general, these are some random questions, but in general, how much wrestling do you watch for figure ideas and executions?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I don't know that I ever don't think about it, right? It's like impossible not to. Peacock has become my best friend. I upgraded to do commercial free to just make it as easy as possible. I have a huge DVD library. I used to have a huge tape library, magazines, programs, trading cards, you name it. I am that type of wrestling fan. I tell you how many hours I watch? I don't know. Some weeks, honestly, I don't watch any, right? Because there's a lot of wrestling on TV and there's a lot going on with wrestling in my life. And other weeks I watch absolutely everything I can possibly absorb. So it really just depends. I mean, obviously think about WrestleMania weekend alone, right? How wild that was to be fully, integrated in that world with the fans and with watching the shows and, Raw and SmackDown and Mania and everything else. So, and, watching indies, watching, Japanese wrestling, Mexican wrestling, which I really love as well. There is a lot. And I no longer, hold it against myself to miss stuff like I used to. I used to be like, I'm a real fan. I have to watch everything. It's just impossible now. And it's okay. And I can still follow along and know what's happening if I miss a couple shows. It's all right.
Yeah, well, and just a few weeks ago, we saw the World Heavyweight Championship debut, or it was unveiled, and I think you might have learned about that on the side, as it not ahead of time, but right when it was happening.
Well, I'm on the West Coast, right? So I don't have
Ah,
a live feed of Raw over here. So a lot of the stuff I'm basically finding out on social media first. And then later that night, catching Raw or SmackDown and actually watching it. So some of the surprise element is gone, which is a bummer. But that is one where we collectively learned in real time as it was happening. Sometimes we get heads up on things, right, which is cool, and you can get to work early, but nothing beats a surprise. So, PLEs, pay-per-views, when stuff goes down there and I don't know about it, I love it.
nice. Um, you're very available. You're on the message boards, you're on Facebook, you're out there, you're on Instagram. So you're getting a lot of feedback and it probably isn't easy to filter through all of that. So I wonder what are some actual constructive criticisms that the Mattel team likes to hear?
Well, I don't mind any criticism as long as it's respectful, right? If you don't like it, or you don't like part choices, or there's a deco mistake, or a head sculpt turned out bad, I mean, tell me about it, tell us about it. That's fine. But if you're disrespectful, or entitled, or attack me or us, that button gets used, you know, like it's my time, you know, it's my time to be a fan with you guys. And yes, I am, you know, in a way representing all this. Like, I don't want to say representing Mattel, because I'm not. When I'm on social media, I'm not truly representing Mattel. That's my social account on Instagram. It's my account on the forums, right? That's my time, you know, to be a collector with you guys. It just happened to be your guy on the inside, right? So I mean, it'd be great if you treated me as your guy on the inside rather than someone working against you. But you know, it's okay, whatever. You know, we're all on social media for different reasons, and some people need to vent or whatever. But you know, if it's disrespectful, you're not venting to me, you're out. But whatever you want to say, if it's like, hey, you know, I wish this would have happened or that would have happened, like, say it. It's great. Then I can go back and say, hey, next time we need to do this. Or maybe I said it already and someone disagreed with me, and now I can say, hey, look, you know, I told you this would happen. Here you go. Here's the evidence. This is what people think. So, you know, give me the feedback. I pass along all valid, reasonable feedback to the team. And I try to do it as early as possible. And a lot of fixes happen, right? A lot like Razor's jeans tucked into the boots and the ponytail. Like, that was something the team was trying to work through ahead of Mania, but you just run out of time, right? Okay, here we are. We're going to present this wave one. It's got to go, you know, with where we are now in the process. But you know, I can say that the designer on that, he was, you know, he was investigating, you know, what parts would actually work and give the best look possible even before we, you know, debuted that and announced that changes were happening. So, look, pass the feedback along, be respectful, interact with me, tell me what you want, tell us what you want, and I'll just keep doing my best to you know, make it a reality.
Yeah, I'm very glad that you got that Razor or Scott Hall fixed. That's such a great fix, and yeah, it's a logical one too. I mean, the height may be a little bit different, and what I'm talking about is the British Bulldog Davy Boy Smith's going to get a build a figure down the line, and he's going to have the jeans, and he's got the combat boots with the jeans tucked into the boots. So I'm very glad that you were able to get that through.
And a little, like, you know, inside knowledge there is one of the reasons it took a little bit longer to figure that out is because it's two different designers.
Mhm.
Bill did the Davy Boy Smith, and a newer designer was doing the Razor Ramon. And so they were developing those two things separately, right? So if it was just like straight up Bill doing both, it probably would have been easy. Yes, I'm designing this for both figures, X, Y, and Z. But he started that Davy Boy first, and he was working on that. So, you know, things like that happen. It's okay. We just need time, right? We just need time. And they explored, and fortunately, everything's going to work out in this case.
You all released a bunch of studio shots over the weekend, and a couple of those were the Ultimate Edition Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero's. And there's been a lot of talk about one, a tattoo, a Dominic tattoo on Rey's arm that was, I believe it was vertical instead of horizontal, and then the Eddie Guerrero torso was a little bit polarizing for some folks. So I'm sure you've probably already heard some of this stuff, but is at that stage, that's way too late in the game to get anything corrected, right?
Yeah, they're produced. They're
Yeah.
produced. Um, I hear ya. Ray might just be an issue with that sample, his tattoo. So I need to take a look at maybe the deco sheet to see how the alignment was there. Hopefully that's the case, and it was just, you know, on that early sample that they shot, it had a weird tattoo. And I mean, in the meantime, if you guys look back at the sample that was at the Superstore, I didn't see anyone complain about the tattoo then.
Mm.
So it could have been correct there, and maybe we just have one sample where they applied something incorrectly. Eddie's torso choice, you know, look, I don't design them. But you know, maybe I gave feedback, maybe I didn't. You know, I don't want to get myself in trouble here, but you know, it's out there. We have real consumer feedback now looking at it, and you know, we can present that ahead of the next Eddie coming out to see what can be done differently.
So there you
Was
go.
that piece PC enough?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, we've got a second Eddie Guerrero Ultimate Edition figure on the way, so maybe it's a different torso by the time the
And
Monday Night Wars.
Eddie was much smaller, right?
Right.
Like, I mean, you it
He was
can't be
pretty jacked,
argued.
but that yeah.
Yeah, it can't be argued that Eddie was massive. Maybe not as massive as this figure makes him out to be, but he was massive during the WWE Championship run, and he was a cruiserweight. For the next figure we're coming out. So I think you'll see that represented in the parts choices.
A lot of questions from international collectors, and they want to know if they're going to be able to get exclusives eventually through Mattel Creations. Is there any motion on that at this point? Is that something that we could see in the future?
Ongoing talks still. You know, once again, with me being a collector like you guys, like I see what's being done with competitors. And we're not privy obviously to their discussions that they have with their various partners to make those things a reality, right? But when you think about doing something like that, I mean, you are offering those things to accounts here with exclusivity in mind. And then it does get a little hairy when you throw them up on a US based website, even if you're shipping
Mhm.
internationally. And some of these companies do have representation of their businesses elsewhere, right? So there are some complications there. It's always being discussed. It was just discussed again about a week ago, I can say. There's nothing to announce, but when there is, we'll let you know. It'll always be top of mind. I'll always push for it when I have those meetings, and we'll see what we can do. But in the meantime, the good news is Ultimate Edition and Legends have opened up internationally even more broadly. So there are steps being made successfully to improve a lot of this stuff, because I know that the exclusive stuff is really sought after. I get it. It's taking some time, taking a little bit longer than we would like, but we're trying.
Are there any more plans for best of Ultimate Editions, and how frequent could they be?
So Best of Ultimate Edition is not a separate line. It's just kind of built into your regular Ultimate waves. And that's, just to, get some of those figures out that were not released in as large quantities during the initial run, kind of before Ultimate Edition really exploded. So I want to keep that pretty tight, maybe once a year, if that even, right? So we'll do once a year for now, but that's not a forever thing. At a point, we'll have to turn the faucet off on that, and then give it a rest. And we're developing more figures already, 3 figures per wave in 2024, to try to alleviate that. But sometimes business dictates that you need more figures, and you just simply can't develop more. And best ofs and greatest hits with smart upgrades, helps a little bit there, and helps some of the people who weren't able to get them originally. So I wouldn't expect tons of best of ultimates by any means. Maybe down the road when we have a lot more under our belt, but I think you're going to see those slow down a little bit in the near future.
Are the how are you approaching the greatest hits? That seems to be a lot of older store exclusives sort of coming back to life, things that were at Kmart and Toys R Us and long gone retailers. But could we see something like a ringside exclusive, like a Hardcore Kane, or would a collector's edition Gorilla Monsoon be something that would fit that line in the future?
Sure. Anything like that. I mean, for a ringside exclusive, we would want their blessing before we threw one of their exclusives into a line like that. Or maybe you don't. Maybe, Hardcore Kane deserves a different type of an upgrade, and he moves to Defining Moments or Ultimate Edition, hypothetically, right? Just making this up. So you have to think about all those things. Do we want to revisit that look elsewhere, as a true, big time upgrade, or is it suitable just to give them the DIJ True Effects treatment with the double jointed elbows? So considering all those things, but we're game if there are figures that people want to see in those greatest hits lines, that warrant an upgrade. And there's great figures from the past. I was just posing those figures during the Nitro stage shoot this weekend, and anyone with single jointed elbows, I was like, these elbows. Like, I couldn't even get Mr. Perfect's hands on his hips, right? So if you look, I'm spoiling it. I took a photo of Mr. Perfect with an NWO shirt and Rick Rude, but his hand is hovering like above his hip because it actually can't touch it because of the single jointed elbows. So it's like, they're great figures from the past that, like, just giving them those new elbows makes a whole world of difference. So and guess what, once again, if you have them already and you're happy with the originals, you don't need to get the new greatest hits versions. They're for people who want to upgrade or people who missed out originally. um yeah, so I mean, we just want to make decisions there of figures people want to see again, maybe some rarities, store exclusives, etc., or just heavy hitters that are popular. Like, Batista's in there. Everyone was like, "Why Batista?" I mean, he's a big movie star now, and he sells great every time we release him. So you got to sprinkle out some Batistas there. Yeah, a little mix of everything. Something for hardcore fans, something for people who missed out, something for some casual fans.
Yeah, it's exciting to see. As someone that owns the original Harley race, I'm glad that collectors are going to get another shot at that because that wasn't an easy figure to get.
Oh, and now you can put, somebody in like a headlock and have him really bust somebody's eyebrow open, right? Because because of the elbows. Yeah, Harley was one that he unfortunately um he wasn't available to us shortly after that figure was released. His contract ended, and he passed away, and you have to give people and families, estates, time to grieve and process. And eventually, everyone came back to the table again, and we got Harley out just as promised. It just took a little longer than usual, but I mean, that's a great example of that trying to get figures like that into the greatest hits line is the perfect reason for it to exist. And I did announce, I think at Superstore this year, that we are going to sprinkle in some of those lower produced Hollywood figures into greatest hits as well. So, hopefully like Scorpion King, maybe even Andre and Roddy. Roddy didn't have full representation. Some of those guys could appear in greatest hits in 2024 and 5, perhaps.
Do you think that the ruthless aggression elites that maybe didn't get as wide uh, release might make their way into there too?
Anything is on the table, right? I still think we need to see where the dust settles with ruthless aggression first, because we still have practically the whole year ahead. Well, maybe a little more than half a year ahead of us now, and we'll see how that pans out. Because nothing was underproduced for ruthless aggression like Harley. Harley was underproduced. Period. I don't even know how he was made. Like the factory should have said, "This isn't enough. We can't move forward," but they made him anyway. So it was really like a weird miracle figure that he was even made in the first place. Um, but not that that's not the case for ruthless aggression. Each of the waves, even the lower produced waves, were produced at decent numbers. I just think, like, Walmart is such a there's tons of stores and they're spread out. And I don't know how many actually hit stores yet. So I need to see where the dust settles. I need to see, where things net out and what the demand is for those figures after this year ends and after I know all those figures are out there. Because, like, looking at the information I have now, nothing was underproduced for the line yet.
Gotcha. One last question, and then we'll let you get out of here. Well, one last serious question. How are you approaching the Mattel Creations exclusives such as Cody and Logan? As far as we haven't seen one of those executions this year. I think you've got two spots that are open. So how are you sort of playing that?
I mean, what is happening in content that would want us to just do a super fast follow and offer something right away? That's kind of what we're looking for. Maybe it's this world heavyweight champion thing, right? Maybe someone wins and the gear is off the charts amazing. Sorry, but if it's Cody again, I don't think it's going to be Cody in that slot because, we did him already and we'll do him in mainline or as a regular. Yeah, Seth. So it just depends. It depends. We're looking for something at the level of Cody returning to WWE, Logan Paul's, WWE appearance debut, something really iconic that it warrants, like, the extra effort really that it takes to pull off something like that, right? Because when you plug it out of the normal assembly line system of doing things. Like everything is set up to make the process. It's still hard work, but it makes it as smooth as possible. That's an out of the box way of doing something, right? And it is like, maybe triple the work, right, to do it that way. So we want that slot for like, oh my gosh, we have to do this and it has to be done this way. And if that doesn't happen, that's okay. I don't think you force fit something into that slot unless it's warranted. We have it reserved as a just in case, and we'll do it if an opportunity comes up that is like, oh man, X, Y, and Z jump ship from another company and like made a big splash in WWE. Let's make this happen now, right? Otherwise, maybe that slot, it can go to another box set or a 2-pack or something like that, and it just gets released normally. So we'll see. They're reserved, and we're ready, and we'll know. I think we'll all collectively know, like, let's do this. Mattel should do this, right? And it's not just like, oh, this person has new gear. Like, that's not enough.
Right on. Yeah, but those slots will be used. It's not like, we'll kick them down the road. They'll be used at some point this year.
For something, we'll make
Yeah.
something, right? We want them to be Cody, Logan level,
Mhm.
as a made to order pre-order. And if not, if something like that doesn't happen again, then we'll just, make something, and maybe it won't be a made to order pre-order. Maybe it'll just be like, we'll produce it and it comes out and we sell it and that's it.
Well, final for you. You're an 80s, 90s collector, sort of like me, but you collect a lot of different things. What are you collecting in the wrestling space at this point?
Everything.
Everything?
Everything. I'm collecting the boss fight. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the line, but the lucha figures. Kevin is a nice guy. I've chatted with him before, and he runs Mass Republic. And he's licensed out, a lot of the lucha talent to boss fight. So that line is pretty fun. I'm buying the zombie retros, which are, excellent in my comparison. Or my take on those is like, that's like the evolution of, what that original line would be today if they just kind of continued, right? Modern sculpting, modern manufacturing, they're really nice figures. Little bit of AEW here and there, not as much as the early years, but I think, maybe that's just due to the slowdown of releases that's come. But Magic is a great friend, and I enjoy everything that he does and designs on that line. And I love supporting my buddy Magic. Man, what else?
Anything old
Ma
school at this point?
Major Bendies. Got to give them a shout out. I'm also trying to control myself, but dabbling in collecting mints on card LJNs right now. So I'm up to maybe 10 mints on card LJNs, and that was in a very short period of time. So I've definitely pumped the brakes because they're a little bit pricey, and I'm like, what the heck are you doing? And they're
Yeah,
really
you
they're
really
really
do.
big. I looked on the floor because they're in those acrylic cases on the floor because they're actually too big for the standard shelves. So I'm gonna have to remove shelves to make them fit. But I'm enjoying that. I'm going to be very selective. I don't intend to have a complete mint on card LJN collection. But if I get a couple, that's pretty cool.
You're not doing all what, 77, 80, however many there are.
I think I just want some iconic names and maybe some overlap with who we do in Coliseum Collection, right? To just have that comparison. But even then, I'm already screwed because that Hogan that we did with the white shirt, like he's super expensive. So I'm like setting myself up for financial failure by those rules already.
Well, I've set out to try and collect all the LJN posters and the
Mm,
bio cards,
hmm.
and sort of round out my LJN collection from when I was a kid, or upgrade some Lucy's. I can't do the min on card, but even that's pricey. I mean, some of those posters, like there's a black card Macho Man poster that's like $400 something, or
Wow.
$500.
See, I would cut it off at the posters that had the real artwork. When they
Oh,
went to real photos, I was like, eh.
yeah,
But that artwork was so good.
yeah. It I'm just so glad that you brought that back with the Coliseum collection, and I love that packaging. Just the reusable packaging is just so great.
I don't think we react. The ones on the team who are fans of that era, like I've never seen a reaction on a team like the first time we opened that Sergeant Slaughter and took a look at it. We were just like, it was like a time machine in our hands taking us back to childhood. So it's just like, whenever we can do something like that, like I know if we're feeling it, other people have to feel that too. So hopefully we can deliver that for like every era of fan that buys our product, like give them something that is like, oh my gosh, like I remember Batista with the lamp from the Jax days, and then now I have an Elite of Batista with the lamp, and Batista mentioned it. Like, why do they always give me a lamp? But like those are the reactions that you want to get, because it just takes you back in time to, maybe better times, maybe times are good now, but a little bit of escape, a little bit of nostalgia is always a good thing.
Yeah, props to your packaging team because they're doing a great
Awesome.
job. Your whole team really is. So, can't thank you enough for doing this. Thanks for all you do. You really are sort of the guy on the inside. So I know that you're appreciated.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. And like I said, I am here for you guys. I'll do whatever I can to bring all of our collective wishes to life. Yeah, keep plugging along, and let's get this stage funded, get this dream item checked off the wish list, and then we can move on to another one.
Yeah, I'd love for that to happen. So these are the last days. If you're going to do it, now's the time to back the stage. So thanks, Steve. Hopefully we can chat with you again in the future. Maybe we'll talk again, post Comic-Con or something like that.
Anytime, happy to do it.